Welcome to Bots and Beyond, your weekly dose of all things automation, mixing up end user, vendor and consultant experience to create your go-to podcast for bot-related insights. I am your host, Wayne Butterfield.
Hello and welcome back to Bots and Beyond. As always, a phenomenal guest this week who I will introduce shortly, and a great episode that I'm sure will really resonate with a lot of the listeners. It's with Gerald Pullen. He's the head of RPA at Lloyds Banking Group, who has got a great story to tell, both trials and tribulations, successes and difficulties. And I know that we've got an amazing episode over the next 20-25 minutes. So, Gerald, thank you ever so much for being a victim on Bots and Beyond. So welcome.
Thank you, Wayne. Absolute pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me on.
Now, as is standard practice for our guests, your intro, who you are, tell the audience what you do, and more importantly, why do you do it?
Yeah, so I as you mentioned in the intro there, I head up RPA, robotic process automation at Lloyds, and I've also got a wider responsibility as part of our intelligent automation function as a sort of coup type role. And it's really been a fantastic few years since getting involved in this space. I've absolutely loved it. And I think what's motivated me most about getting involved and really staying in this space for the last 4 years, it's just I'm big on purpose and being connected to a vision that motivates me. And in the bank, we've been following, I guess, our mission of helping Britain prosper for the last several years and building that bank of the future. And through me, I think it's just that using automation, we've been able to connect directly to that and really deliver what matters, particularly in the last 12 months or so with COVID, just making that real difference by using some of these capabilities. And for me, it's that kind of big personal learning journey as well, Wayne, just in terms of every day is a school day, genuinely, starting with RPA and then getting into the other capabilities that we've been putting live over the last few years, be that OCR, chatbots, NLP, it's just been a fascinating experience. So yeah, for me, it kind of ticks all the boxes that I've been looking for about doing something that matters and makes a difference, as well as learning new things.
There's so much I want to dig into in that. One of the things I'm quite keen on, I'm sure the listeners are as well. So you mentioned kind of the last 4 years being involved in automation, but you haven't only been in the bank for the last 4 years. So what were you doing before? And kind of what was the catalyst to get involved in automation?
Yeah, I've been, I think this year, 20 years in financial services, which is unbelievable to me, to be honest, given that I started in a post room opening envelopes as a temp 20 years ago. So I don't think I ever thought I'd be doing what I'm doing today at that time. My career certainly diverged from, I think, starting out and looking at a career in journalism to one where I've really just stayed in banking. And I think my career up until automation, though, is probably had about 2 or 3 themes that I think have kept me in the bank. One's definitely around just continually improving things. I've always, even since the very early days, had that kind of view of, can we do this better? Why are we doing this? What's the purpose of what we're doing here? How does it connect to the customer? So very early on, and I guess my background here will be quite common, actually, having spoken to a few of my peers in the industry, a real kind of strong background in Lean, Six Sigma. So I spent a number of years doing improvement projects across lots of different parts of the bank. And then after, I guess, telling people this is how you could do things better, I thought I'd better actually get the T-shirt myself. So I went into a few years of running operations. I ran some large complaint handling operations. Then off the back of that, kind of got into remediation and fixing kind of legacy customer problems. And then after that, I went back to my roots as the bank embarked on end-to-end journey transformation and led a couple of system thinking teams there. And it was that getting back to my roots, which was where the opportunity for exploring RPA came along. And I jumped at it because I had, I guess, a background vaguely in IT from back when I was at university, but I think it was more about, this looks like a really significant way to make a difference and do something quite transformational. So I think our director at the time said, look, I want to explore this robotics thing that I'm hearing all about, and this was probably summer 2017, and it was from there I just kind of jumped in with both feet and started up the team.
Great. And I think a lot of what you said also resonates with me and certainly my early career as well. Obviously, my background being telco versus financial services, but being a kind of problem solver by nature and asking the why question is something, is a characteristic that I think many of the successful leaders in this industry kind of have. It's not taking the standard approach of, well, this is how we've always done it. It's actually thinking about how you can use some of these technologies to deliver on some of those process improvement initiatives. One of the things, though, that I kind of found reasonably easy working in telco was the fact that I was working in telco, and that is a much less regulated industry than what you might say is banking and financial services. So I know that this is more of a challenge for you. I'd be really interested in kind of some of the challenges you see with using, these are quite cutting edge technologies, whether you are new or a new user or someone who's been doing this for a while. In the grand scheme of the age of the bank, RPA and intelligent automation are just a speck on its history. So what kind of challenges does that present? Trying to be cutting edge in an organization that's heavily regulated and obviously quite traditional in its way of working and also in its history.
Yeah, it's a great question, Wayne, and I think there's a couple of things really on that. And I think the first one that's always been really helpful, in fact, is I think it was the right thing to explore at the right time. And by that, I mean, I think we're very fortunate that our exploration into intelligent automation, starting with RPA, coincided with when the bank was embarking on one of the biggest transformations in Europe, really kind of moving away from split back and front office into end-to-end journeys, and moving to a much more agile approach. So moving into that ethos, culture, business setup probably naturally helped remove some of the traditional barriers you'd expect. And we were able to, I think, ride on that wave. But you're absolutely right. It didn't mean it was plain sailing. And we probably spent a lot less now, I'm pleased to say, but certainly the last 3 years, probably before this one, you felt like you were just answering the same questions in every meeting you went to. And we spent a huge amount of time on education and publicity around what a robot is, what a robot isn't, what a robot can do, what a robot can't do, and really kind of demonstrating the capability with real life case studies and how robotics helped with those and helped deliver the solution to a customer problem or a business problem. But you're right. There's absolutely that kind of fear of, what happens if the robot goes rogue and does its own thing, which you all have, I'm sure, seen many, many times. And are we talking about physical robots here? And you having to kind of start every presentation with this slide with a picture of R2D2 with a big red line through it, and that was part and parcel of most of our updates over the few years. There's the other challenge of a robot's going to take our jobs. So all of those things, with the main one being, how do we know what the robot's doing, and what happens if the robot decides to do this? It was facing into that. It took a huge amount of time and investment, really. But I think what helped massively was bringing kind of the risk cyber community on the journey with us. And it sounds cliched, but it was absolutely key in terms of getting them fully on board with what we were looking to do, how we were setting ourselves up, the operating model we'd decided upon, the route to live for getting a robot from an idea through to live and running in the control room. And then as well, just having a couple of showcase use cases which really undeniably prove the value of RPA and the value return and how quick you could get that value return. And also the kind of use cases for RPA that actually help from a risk and audit perspective in terms of help making us more compliant. Robots closing out audit issues, helping with data migrations, helping make sure the mistakes can't be made where previously the processes had lots of human error. And I think just proving that point of actually every time you apply an intelligent automation solution to an end-to-end process or parts of an end-to-end process, just showing that you've got that greater view of that process than you've probably ever had, and the audit trail of a robot being more clear than any audit trail you'll ever get for a colleague. So all of that helped. And then last year in particular, it was enabling us to respond to the completely unexpected, unforeseen, unprecedented demand from COVID. And actually, without having intelligent automation in our kit bag, I'm just not sure what the other solutions would have been to things like bounce back loans, mortgage repayment holidays, the volume of customer queries you see as we all come to terms with what's happening in the pandemic. So all of those things, for anyone who's kind of skeptical about any of these solutions, and as I say, that really did drop off in the last kind of 12 months. But yeah, anyone who saw the capabilities and how they were used last year was just, obviously, there was no doubt about the value that they offered to the organisation.
And I think, COVID as an accelerator, as a challenge, in some instances is, it's got a lot to answer for, of course. But there are positives that kind of come out of all of this. And, we were talking a bit before we started recording about, the change in the way that we work, the locations that we work and all of that stuff. But certainly there are changes, I think, in mindset, in people's acceptance of this type of technology, that we really do have to to run with moving forward. And I must admit, I do not miss those conversations that you referenced before around, is it a physical robot? It's just like, no, God, it takes me back almost a decade. So, and I think the thing for you to kind of call out as well is that it's in your type of industry, with it being highly regulated, it's not just a one and done for you, is it? It's almost a continuous checks and balances, and that there is, you're never done from an audit perspective. You're never done from a regulatory perspective. There's always something that's kind of changing. So as much as I think I kind of classed a lot of the stuff I did at O2 as kind of one and done, I think it's ever going to feel quite like that for you, is it? I don't think you're ever going to think, right, we never need to be audited again. I might be wrong, but I think that's one of the challenges, isn't it, in working in a big bank. And so I guess linked to that, thinking about regulation and audits and compliance and all of that, how on earth do you still remain kind of swift and agile and receptive to change and all of that when you have kind of the eyes of many different departments and auditors and all of that looking at what you're doing and almost trying to pick fault with it? It just feels almost counterintuitive that you can be both agile and well regulated. I'm sure the audience would love to get a bit of insight into how you manage that.
Yeah, and you know, I'm sure we haven't got all the answers in this space, but I think we found an approach that works for us. And I think how we decided to set ourselves up has definitely helped with that. And then I think, as I mentioned, us running in an agile way has really helped us there too, in terms of moving quickly. So a bit of context to make sense of what I say is, from day one, when we set up our approach to this, we decided on a federated model. By that, I mean in the centre, we'd have a centre of excellence with defining how you do automation in the bank. And then we would empower the business to set up their own build and maintain capability, decide on their own backlogs and prioritization of robotic opportunities, with us supporting in the centre with training, technical expertise, and running the robotics platform. And that was the decision made right at the start, and continues to this day. And we've never kind of considered changing that. And I think that's been an absolutely fundamental part of the success, because what that's meant is we ensure consistency, but we're allowing the business areas to move at the pace that they want to move at. They can decide what they want to automate, what they don't want to automate. They've got those career paths in their business areas to build their own automation capabilities. And in terms of helping with the eyes of audit, as you say, the power of having these RPA hubs in functions like cybersecurity and risk is immeasurable, because you've got, the people who are maybe would traditionally challenge the usage of some of this, doing it themselves and doing it on their own processes. And I think that kind of set up in the centre with the federation, with us defining what that federation needs to look like, with things like the hub in a box that we set up at the beginning to define how a good hub should work, and our defined route to live, which every single opportunity needs to go through without exception. Nobody can build a robot without coming through us centrally. But it makes it sound like, oh, that sounds very heavy on the governance. Well, it's not, because we've set it up in such a way that I run the Centre of Excellence, as it traditionally would be known, as an agile lab. So I guess my official title is I'm product owner for RPA, and we run our work in a series of sprints. And the approach we take, therefore, with the governance is very aligned to that. So I mentioned that route to live, and we've got 4 stage gates, from stage gate 1 being the approval of the idea for a robot into kind of configuration. Stage gate 4 meaning it can go live into the control room. Obviously, a couple of stage gates in between there, but we have kind of stage gates every day, 20-minute slot in the morning, 20-minute slot in the afternoon, to approve the different processes from any part of the group that come through. So we've got really good control, really good central oversight of everything that's going on, which satisfies then any auditor from external, internal, different lines of risk. And we use some of those agile tools like Confluence and Jira to help with the audit trail of who signed it off, who agreed that that was suitable for automation. We've got all this kind of central capture of all the different process owner and risk sign off. So we've put in really good, tight controls, but without slowing down the route to live and the ability to turn around some of these opportunities pretty damn quick these days, particularly as we've said, in response to COVID, that you couldn't really keep to traditional build timescales there, because we had to meet the demand that's coming in. But again, with the capability we set up, reusability is a massive thing, and that really helped us be able to respond quite quickly last year, because of the number of automations we've now got live, we can piece together parts of those into a new solution very, very quickly. So I think we've got a really good balance, but that's not to say that we're not continually improving our approach to make it as slick as we can whilst keeping the required control.
Brilliant. And I think, the use of, when I hear of Jira and Confluence, usually it's in like software development, agile environments, and they're using those tools for things like collaboration and things. It's interesting that those same tools in this instance are used to both, collaborate and document, but also from an audit perspective as well, which I think is really good to know, that it's not just using these tools in order to help speed things up and to create awareness, but actually to showcase sign off and make sure that the auditors are pleased. So that really helps. I think it's a great explanation and way of kind of describing the level of control versus the speed that you've still got, which is fantastic. I think it's probably worthwhile digging into actually thinking about, the bank's a big place. Whereabouts in the bank are you actually sat, and what, if you think about you mentioned before federated as part of the previous answer. So talk to us a little bit about where you sit in the bank and the kind of deployment model that you have. You centralized, federated, a bit of both. What is it that makes your position in the bank?
We are sitting in our group transformation function, and we sit in an area called enterprise enablers, and the reason for that is, an enabler, as we define it, is basically something that one of our customer journeys can use, almost like draw upon a set of capabilities that any of our journeys can use to drive business or customer value. So we're sat centrally, so anyone can use it in the group, and there's no barriers to that, and equally no one's having to reinvent the wheel every time they want to approach something. And it also gives that comfort, again, kind of back to the risk point, about the fact that you haven't got 7 different ways to solve the same problem. You've got one tried and trusted method that everyone's got that confidence in. And I think you've got that blend then of these customer journeys or business areas have got that accountability and control over their own backlog. My team, Centre of Excellence, provides everything they need to make RPA easy to adopt. And there's other teams that sit alongside mine in the part of transformation we're in intelligent automation, covering chatbots, other intelligent products, machine learning platform, and we're all broadly the same in terms of having that kind of central capability that everyone can access. We run the platforms, we scale the platforms to their use, but we provide an easy service for the business areas to adopt in that federated way. So then you get that consistency of one best way, to go back to my Lean Six Sigma roots, that best practice. But then equally, we've got that real onus of managing that community out there using our services to help share best practice, solve common problems. And we see a lot of that in terms of somebody from insurance going, oh, I'm looking to solve this problem. Has anyone tackled this before? And somebody else in, say, retail going, yeah, seen that before, let me help you. And I think that's a really useful conduit that we have to bring those people together. And then I mentioned reusability, having those shared objects, which means that people aren't having to start from scratch. So hopefully when they come to build something, particularly now we've got 200 plus processes live, somebody's probably done part of that before at least. And then from a run perspective, having that control room allows those business areas to focus on build and not run. So we take away that day-to-day having to eyeball our digital workforce to make sure it's running effectively, and if it's not, them taking care of either simple things to put them right or raising incidents, and all that kind of effort's taken away then from the different business areas. But then, there are obviously, I think, challenges with that model. So it definitely works for us. I don't think it's a one size fits all approach, and I'm sure there'll be areas who have got a complete opposite to what we've set up and still deliver some fantastic value. I would say probably the limitations for me that I think probably aren't helped with a federated model. So I think it's that bit of, we see across, I think we've got nearly 70 developers now across the bank in RPA, but we don't have that direct control about them achieving their accreditation or full competency. It's that management of capacity. So one hub might have some capacity, another one might be absolutely stacked out. So it's not really our role to even out that workload. And we do get kind of that heavy reliance on our technical experts in our central team across new developers in the group, and that can be a challenge to balance that resource at times. And then you do get kind of that local governance plus divisional governance plus or whatever we have in place from the centre. But I think on balance, if you look at the good things I mentioned versus probably those small areas of friction, that federation has been absolutely critical to the pace we've managed to move at, from having kind of no robots live whatsoever in summer 2017 through to where we are today, having now released over 2 million hours of capacity through RPA across the different parts of the bank.
Now, I think some fantastic insights in there, Gerald, again, and having spent time with you, in the bank, looking at how you operate, not just in RPA, but obviously in wider intelligent automation. I really do see you as a gold standard. I've been thoroughly impressed. Even though I often class as an industry veteran, look at the work that you guys have done, and I can learn a lot. So, that kind of leads me probably to the last question then. I could probably reel off, as you know, like a number of areas I think are real successes, but I'd be really interested, what are your kind of 1, 2, 3 key successes? What are you most proud of in what you've done and what you've been able to achieve?
Yeah, and I think what's great is there's so many I could pick out, Wayne. I think it's been just the probably the best 3-4 years of my career to date, just in terms of what we've managed to set up from an absolute standing start. I mean, we had a robot on a desktop PC in a cupboard in 2017. So to move from that to 200 plus processes live now, 2 million hours back to the business, is terrific. It was great in 2019 when we picked up a couple of awards, very proud moment. But I think number one for me has just been, I've been part of some fantastic teams in the 20 years I've been in banking, and without question, the team I'm with now, as from standing, I think initially there were maybe 3 of us, to the kind of community we have now running all aspects of automation in Lloyds. It's just an absolute pleasure to come into work every day, because we're all of the same mindset. We all want to do great things for our customers and deliver new capabilities and experiment. And I think that's it for me. Ultimately, that's all I think we look for in work, really, in terms of something with real purpose that we can have fun with along the way, that we know is making a difference. So I think it's just being part of that team, part of that community in the bank that's made such a difference over the last few years. And I think I'm looking forward to many more years in this space as we see the new capabilities come on board and how the future of tech changes the way and the face of banking.
That again is probably an episode in itself. So thank you ever so much for your time, Gerald. Really do appreciate gaining your insights. And obviously, I'm sure the listeners have gained immense value from our discussion. So thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Been an absolute pleasure and great to talk to you.
Excellent. And thank you for listening. And with that, I will look forward to speaking to you all next week.